So these are the two teams that you look at and you say, obviously there are areas that are not quite as elite as other areas, but they're basically complete teams where there are no weaknesses.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you go, and I did this in my video yesterday. You just go through every position, and they are just razor thin. Now, of course, I'm arguing, stumping as a Clemson guy in certain positions on side of Clemson. I have a lot of Ohio State fans coming back at me. We're having a stat war, in the comment section and all that. But at the end of the day, let's just be honest here. It's razor thin across the board. I mean, you could say maybe Clemson has the best wide receiver in Higgins. But is he like 10 times better than the best receiver in Ohio State? Of course he's not. You could say Chase Young is the best defensive lineman in this game. I'm not going to argue with that. But I could say that Isaiah Simmons is the best linebacker in this game. You can just go back and forth, back and forth. And when you get into a discussion like that, at the end of the day, these are two elite teams that really have very, very few weaknesses, if any at all, honestly. And so I can't – I'm telling you, I never get, tired of being in the playoffs and playing great teams, but it's been Clemson and Alabama every head to head every year. And so to go into a game against a well-matched, almost evenly matched Ohio State team, in my opinion, for the semifinal game, I'm so excited about it.
How much in the comments section of your videos, in the live chats, or people calling you up, does 31-0 come up?
Well, I say that a lot. Yeah. Well, I don't say it so much in my videos, although I probably will leading into the game here. But of course, I do most of my 31-0, 0-3 versus Clemson. Woody Hayes got the best hit on a Clemson player than any player did. All that sort of thing. I leave that to Twitter for the most part. But listen, here's the bottom line. Everybody knows that this is not 2016 Ohio State. Everybody knows this isn't 2016 Clemson. So that's completely irrelevant. Of course, what happened in 1978 is irrelevant. And of course, what happened against Urban Meyer in the Orange Bowl, which was a very close game, by the way.
That was a really good game. Yeah,
that's also irrelevant. So it's a completely different team from all sides. My biggest, of course, I'm picking Clemson to win a close game here. But my whole reason for that, if you take the skill positions all out of it, because I think that those are pretty equal when it comes down to it, that the experience is the only reason, and the coaching staff, mainly the experience of the coaching staff. When you're talking about Brent Venables and Dabo Swinney, who are coaches who have been here, done that year in, year out, and of course every single player on Clemson's team, from as long as they're not a true freshman. All the upperclassmen, they have never not played in playoff games and never not played in national championship games. So there's nobody in Ohio State that can say that. Now, Ryan Day, what he's done this season is pretty unprecedented. I mean, to do what he's done now, I think the only one that we could compare to him probably in recent history would be Lincoln Riley taking over from Stoops and just sort of not only maintaining what was there, but making it better, it seems. And so Ryan Day has done that, and that's very impressive as a first-year head coach. But there, in my opinion, there's no great equalizer more than experience, and that's what Clemson has over Ohio State right now.
Yeah, they certainly do. So from a player standpoint, you outlined it. Clemson, this is what they're used to. So when they step on the field, even the preparation, even being at a different site and knowing this is a playoff game, certainly Ohio State's gone to bowl games and that's a different experience. But this being a playoff game, preparing for a game that is your season's on the line, Ohio State players haven't been through that since the 2016 team. So that would have to be freshmen that are now seniors and freshmen that really were impactful. So there's a handful of them. But other than that, yeah, this is not going to be a different experience for Clemson. They've been through this so many times and going through it almost every year 2 times because they made the championship game almost every time except 2017 versus Ohio State. Yeah, we know that is a difference. This is a new experience for Ohio State. Maybe they'll handle it well. Maybe they won't. But we know Clemson, this is going to be, okay, it's time to get to business. We know we've been through this. We know our routine. We know what we do. We know what gets us to peak at the right time. And then for the coaching staff, another good point you made, it would be a little bit different possibly if Urban Meyer was running the show and he was, okay, I'm the guy that knows what to do. And even though these players haven't navigated this before, I've been through this a zillion times. Versus Ryan Day, a first year, and he's doing an amazing job, but it's different.
It's different. There's a big difference. And listen, you're not going to get any argument from me that clearly Ohio State has played a much tougher schedule. Their battle. This is the thing I hear all the time. They're more battle tested than Clemson is. They played all these top 10 teams, and they're battle tested. On the other hand, I say, look, I know last year's not supposed to matter, but these players are on this team. For the majority of them were on the team last year. And in my opinion, there's nobody that's more battle tested in the postseason in these type of games than Clemson is out of all 4 teams that we're talking about right now. So, it's 6, 1/2 dozen the other. And it is just different. It is just different whenever, when all the marbles are on the line, and it's there's no big of game that any of these players on Ohio State's team is what they're going to play on December 28th.
When we came up on the 2016 game, there was the football side of me that watched Ohio State struggle on offense. So they won a 2 versus 3 matchup against Michigan, 30-27 in overtime. But don't let that score fool you. And I heard Urban Meyer even talking about it the other day. He was asked about the Clemson game from a few years ago. And then he was asked about Ohio State, Michigan, and some of the biggest games that they've had. And that was his one really close call against Michigan. The other game, they stomped them. He had a close call in 2013. But anyway, 2016, Big Ten title possibly on the line, playoff berth on the line. Ohio State wins at 30-27. Again, 30 points on the board for the Buckeyes, but that team mightily struggled to gain first downs against Michigan. Michigan had an elite defense. Ohio State couldn't score. They were down 17-0 in that game. They needed a pick 6 to get in the game. They needed like everything that they could muster offensively to do anything in that game. So going into the Clemson game, that was right here in my mind that, my goodness, they're playing. Michigan was really good on defense. Clemson's elite on defense. So they're taking Michigan, and athletically, it's like that. So how are they going to do anything in this game? And then it played out. JT Barrett was just too limited throwing the ball down the field. It was just everything was in a box. And Ohio State didn't have the power runner that they had in a J.K. Dobbins. They had a couple nice backs. Curtis Samuel, we see scoring touchdowns almost every week for the Carolina Panthers, but he just wasn't enough. They just didn't have the offensive personnel. They had a great defense that just got worn down by Clemson in the second half. So even though the odds makers were telling me Ohio State's like a 2-point favorite, I think they were about a 2-point favorite in that game. I think they just got the respect of Urban Meyer, Ohio State. Oh, this team just won a national championship 2 years ago, and they should have been in the playoff last year. And Clemson obviously had only achieved something the previous year. So there was an amount of respect given Ohio State by Vegas that I think was, and it proved out on the field, was a little shallow.
Yeah.
And I don't see that this year. Now, if Clemson went out there and beat them, if they beat them 31-0, I would be stunned.
That's not going to happen.
If they go out there and they beat them decidedly, let's say it's 34-17, I wouldn't be shocked because, again, maybe the experience kicks in. Maybe Justin Fields makes a few miscues. I do think it's going to be a really good game, and I think the talent is razor close, like elite, 2 best rosters probably in the nation, playing along with Alabama. But yeah, so if you could pinpoint maybe 1 or 2 things that you think are going to be key, like if you would look at if we could hand you the box score, but not tell you who won the game, like what would you be looking at?
Well, I think the key to this game is Clemson's offensive line versus Ohio State's defensive line. I think there's a clear advantage for Ohio State on the defensive line. I think a lot of people disagree with me about this, but I still think that Clemson has an edge on the offensive line. But the matchup I'm looking for the most, and this is going to be the most intriguing matchup of the game, is Chase Young potentially going up against Jackson Carman, the Ohio kid, the 5-star out of Ohio that, came down to Ohio State or Clemson chose Clemson. But anyway, he's a true sophomore. Now the thing is, he plays the left side of the line, so they can move Chase Young around. They don't have to put him up against Jackson Carman. Although I think they do move Chase Young around a lot, so there will be some matchups there. So I think that's the key. Now the thing that makes me somewhat optimistic about the matchup with Chase Young is that obviously we have a world-class running back who can somewhat mitigate the pass rush because they're going to have to respect Travis Etienne getting the ball. Also, thank God this year we're seeing Trevor Lawrence emerge as not only a good runner, but a great runner. I don't know, he has like 600 or 700 yards rushing this year or something. But anyway, so they're going to have to respect that too. So I think Dabo Swinney and that offensive staff are smart enough. They know the poison in the soup. They know that Chase Young is the guy that could wreck the game for Clemson's offense. And so I think that they'll do a lot of different looks, a lot of different motions, and a lot of different schemes to try to mitigate that pass rush from Chase Young. So that's what I'm looking forward to the most. How do they mitigate the pass rush from Ohio State?
So fortunately for the Buckeyes, Chase Young obviously gets the attention from the opponents. And that's probably the deepest, as has been the case for Clemson in recent years, the most elite and the deepest unit on the field for Ohio State. So I would think, yeah, Clemson's going to take Chase Young out of the game, do what they can to put, again, they can't control best player because, again, as you say, Chase Young's going to be all over the place on the defensive front. But in regards to double teaming him, he's not been making huge plays in the last few times out because of that. You see like two guys plus somebody chipping or helping where they're on Chase Young, but Ohio State is very strong across the board and has a deep defensive line. So those other guys are going to have to understand, hey, I'm going to be on a one-on-one. I got to make it work, and I got to make big plays. Ohio State, if we're going to find any kind of weakness, so Sean Wade, one of their best players in the secondary, missed the Michigan game. And Shea Patterson had 250 yards passing in the first half. Michigan was hitting them for like considerable strikes, like consistent 20-yard strikes down the field. And Michigan is a really, really, really good wide receiver core, but it's not as good as Clemson's.
No.
And Shea Patterson's a good quarterback. He's like one of the 25 best quarterbacks in the country, but he's not the best quarterback in the country or one of the two best or three best or whatever. Probably the best. So there's a difference. Again, Michigan's really good in those two departments, but they're not top one good. So we're probably looking at the best wide receivers in the country and the best quarterback in the country against an Ohio State secondary that with Jeffrey Okudah will most likely be the first cornerback off the board in the NFL draft. And he's not alone. Like they're loaded there, but you know what the deal is with wide receivers and secondary. Regardless of how good your secondary is, it could be loaded with NFL players. If they got to hang back there for a while, to your first point, the wide receivers are going to chew them up.
Yes, and that's the other issue here is that Clemson has 3 or 4 NFL wide receivers as well. So you can't double team Higgins because that'll leave Ross and Amari Rogers having a field day. So and listen, the same goes. This is. You can flip the coin here. The same problem that Clemson's going to have against Ohio State's offense. So they're very similar. It's going to be a complete and total chess match. Now, this is to your point earlier about you said you wouldn't be surprised just based on Clemson's experience that if it was a 34-17, I actually would be surprised about that. That's giving all respect to Ohio State. I think I'd be shocked if either one of these teams won this by more than 7 points. I think it'll come down to the fourth quarter, maybe who gets the ball last or something in that nature, or maybe even a special teams play like we saw in the first national championship between Clemson and Alabama, where Nick Saban made the gutsy call to do that onside kick at the beginning of the second half, and a 1 in 50 chance maybe of actually executing that, and he did, and that ended up being the difference. So will we see something like that in this game? Maybe a fake field goal, fake punt, some sort of trick play that ends up working in one team's favor or against another team that makes this that decides the outcome of this game. That's how close I think this will be.
Not only did Nick Saban make that call a la Sean Payton against the Colts in the Super Bowl coming out at halftime, but also Kenyon Drake had the kickoff return for a touchdown in the second half. So basically, Alabama turns a 45-40 win based on 2 special teams plays that were enormous.
Yeah, and so I would fully expect. Well, I know that Dabo Swinney is known for doing certain things like that when it's least expected. He's not one of these guys. You certain coaches throughout the regular season games, they'll do stuff like that. You don't see a lot of trick stuff from Clemson, other than maybe like running the lineman as a running back. The fridge package is what they call it, named after the fridge, that sort of thing. But that's not real gimmicky. When you see an offensive lineman come in at tailback, he's going to get the ball, right? I mean, that's not much of a trick. But a lot of these coaches, they do gimmicky stuff throughout the year. Dabo does not do gimmicky things, but he's known to pull out all the stops in games like this, especially if it's close. So I wouldn't be surprised to see on Dabo's side, and I also wouldn't be surprised to see if Ohio State is practicing some sort of wrinkles to throw Clemson off kilter as well.
Yeah, Ohio State down 2 touchdowns in the second half to Wisconsin, risked in its own end throwing a pass from the punter Drew Chrisman for a first down.
See,
that helped turn that game.
Exactly.
Got Pigskin Pete on the line. You got to join him on YouTube right here. Talking Clemson. He talks the nation. He talks football all the time. So you broke it down just recently here.
I did.
On your channel.
I did a video yesterday breaking that down. Got a pretty good reaction from most Ohio State fans. A lot of them came on there and told me that Ohio State's going to win 40-20. I'm seeing a lot of that 45-10, 40-20, all that sort of thing. That's going to be a rout. But I think the most reasonable people, that's a lot of fan talk, but I think most reasonable people think this is going to be a close game.
Yeah, I can't even respond to that. Anyone who would say, oh, my goodness. If it's a 2-score game, it's going to be a 2-score game because Clemson's up 34-30 with 3 minutes left. And then Ohio State's got to chuck it around and there's a pick six, or, where it's still coming down to the last couple minutes, but there's a score by the team that's leading just to ice the game. But it's still a razor close game, but it just broke that way in the last couple minutes.
Yeah.
I can't see anything else.
Listen, if you're somebody like me, all I said was everything I just told you. I think it's going to be a great game, a close game. I give Clemson the edge. And me saying that I give Clemson the edge all of a sudden turns into, now this idiot's guaranteeing a win from Clemson. He's saying they're going to blow Ohio State out when look, I didn't say any of that. I'm a fan. I am a homer, a self-admitted homer. Yes, I do have some bias, but I'm not delusional. Okay. I don't think that this is going to be a 50-10 or 31-0 win from Clemson.
And not that you would have a right. I don't even know what the term is. I would be understandable actually based on all the success that Clemson's had in the last few years, based on being able to do that to Alabama by 28 points and Notre Dame by 27 points in last year's playoff, based on what happened the last time these two teams got on the same field, even though they're not the same teams, but the same names. It would be understandable if you got on and said, you know what, we're going to blow them out. Look how dominant we were in the playoffs last year. We're going to be 30 consecutive wins in the books. Look, 31-0 the last time we were on the field with these clowns. It's going to be 42-10. I would think that would be understandable. I wouldn't agree with it.
Yeah, I wouldn't agree with it either. But I don't know. I think that there is something to be said for the mental aspect of this. And there is a mental hurdle, let's be honest here, for Ohio State. They've never beat Clemson. And why that does not matter this year, it's still in the back of the coaches' minds. Believe me, Ohio State coaches, Ryan Day wants to beat Clemson to avenge Urban Meyer. Urban Meyer was 0-2 versus Clemson in big games. You think he doesn't want to avenge that? Do you think these players and fans are tired of hearing the 31-0 and 0-3 thing? Of course they are. So it does play a factor in it. And it doesn't relegate who's going to win the game, but it certainly does play a factor. And here's the other thing that I tell people is, to be the man, you got to beat the man. And this is something that Clemson's been living with in the shadow of Alabama for the past 5 years. And we've squared off against them 4 times, and we've won 2 national championships against them. So we sort of emerged and earned our way to that bragging right and say that, is Ohio State great? Yes. But you're not as great as Clemson until you beat them. I mean, this is all there is to it.
Yeah. So that's interesting, because if you're a fan of Kansas State, Mississippi State, fill in the blank, your marginal decent teams that go out there and go 8-4 most seasons, they're kind of resigned to, hey, get us to a nice bowl game, and it would be great if we upset Oklahoma or whoever once in a while. But basically, we know our place in life. There's just very few programs, and I know it's Alabama. I know it's Clemson now. It wasn't 5 years ago, but they're the recent elite, and it's Ohio State. It's definitely those 3 programs. And then Georgia fans might feel this way. Oklahoma fans might feel this way. Maybe USC fans clinging to the past could feel this way, that they don't want to hear that anybody's better than them. So that Ohio State fans are clinging, to those.
Yes.
The 31-0 and the 0-3, and it just bothers them that somebody can say, we've got this over you. even with the success Alabama has had, Ohio State can say, we went to a national championship game on the road to it. We beat you. That's the last time we played you, and we beat you. Because they don't want to hear, they don't want to see a list and see that they're number 3. They want to always see number 1 because they feel Ohio State should be number 1. Alabama fans feel like we should always be the best, considered the best, considered the gold standard. And now Clemson joined that little fraternity in terms of, and they've got every right to say, we should consider ourselves the best. And based on recent results, that's what it is. Dabo said the other day, he made a comment about Ohio State, Alabama, Clemson have the most wins. I forget what his time frame was, but they're tied for the most wins in the last 8 years or whatever the time frame.
This decade, yeah.
Certainly, Ohio, regardless of who wins this game and if either one would win the national championship, we've got a 6-year run in the playoff era, and we've only got 3 schools that have won a national championship. So right now it's Clemson 2, Alabama 2, Ohio State 1. So Ohio State's got a chance to even that out, and it's going to be 2-2-2. And I know that's not a long stretch of time, but that's still pretty much a separation of kind of Alabama, Clemson, but Ohio State's right there to join that 3, and then it's everybody else.
And and it has been, despite the fact that Ohio State, listen, people forget, or at least I don't forget, but a lot of people forget that Ohio State does have a national championship in the playoff era. They were the first one to do it. It wasn't that long ago. It was only in 2014. So it's not like Ohio State's been out of the mix for the past 10 years or whatever it is. They've been right there. They've just barely missed the playoffs. They've had a couple of missteps here and there. And there may be even some controversial things about whether they should have been in the playoffs maybe the last year or the year before that, but they weren't. But a lot of Ohio State fans, like you just mentioned, there's an entitlement to certain teams. Clemson doesn't have this entitlement because we're somewhat new to the party, so to speak. But the Ohio State fans forget that your national championships throughout the history of your program mean nothing today. They certainly don't mean anything to Clemson fans, as much as you want to point that out. It's completely pointless to us. But they go the total opposite way, as they'll say, Clemson's only been good in their entire history for the past 4 years. They're not even a top 50 program. This is what one guy told me yesterday. They're not even a top 50 program in the history of college football. And listen, Clemson, I'll concede this. They don't have the national championship. They don't have the blue blood status that Ohio State has or Alabama has. But Clemson has had a very, very great football history. They are the 15th winningest program in college football. Is that as good as Ohio State? No, but that's nothing to sneeze at when you talk about 130 teams in the FBS. They played in 40 something bowl, almost 50 bowl games, have a winning bowl record throughout that time, 3 national championships. So these people that think that Clemson's program has been terrible for 100 years and all of a sudden just got good in 2012, they have no idea. They need to go do their research in their history.
Absolutely. I broke it down a few weeks ago because I saw something on Twitter where somebody broke it down, and it was a service that actually, it was a site that actually I could believe it. So Michigan likes to claim the most wins of all time, and they can because they've got the most wins of all time. Obviously, they're looking over their shoulder because it's closing fast.
Yeah.
But Ohio State, in running the table this season, somebody figured out on this site again, about 4 games left in the regular season, that if Ohio State ran the table, which they have, of course, and beat Michigan, that they would overtake Michigan in having the best winning percentage in the history of college football all time.
Okay.
And yes, and so that led me into, okay, I want to start breaking down the numbers and see what were the recent trends, what are the all-time trends. And yes, Clemson was number 15 all time in wins, and obviously those wins are coming fast, so they're rising up the ranks pretty quickly. And you don't think over 150 years things could change that quickly, but they actually have, because I went back like 10 years and thought, okay, and they've made up a lot of ground in 10 years even at Clemson.
And I know we're talking about Ohio State and Clemson and the Blue Bloods, but I'm gonna take this one last chance in 2019 to take a shot at the Gamecocks. Dabo Swinney has more bowl wins with Clemson than the Gamecocks have over 120 years. Think about that for a second. 9. That's how many bowl wins the Gamecocks have. Ever.
And bowls were really rare back in like the 40s. You had to be like really good because there was only like 6 bowl games and so forth. But in the last 30 years. You know, we were playing 25 bowl games in 1980. So it's been a long stretch that you should be making. If your program's any good, you should be going to bowl games. So yeah, that's pretty bad for South Carolina.
And you know, their first bowl game wasn't until I think 1994. Or first, maybe it was their first bowl win.
It would be their first bowl win. Yeah, they went bowl games in the 80s.
But even so, I mean, I had a driver's license in 1994. That's pretty bad.
Yeah, after you guys made it through that 5-year stretch of losing to Spurrier, you've taken it over, and it doesn't look to be changing anytime soon. It would be miserable being in that state as a South Carolina fan.
Well, yeah, I mean, the 5-year thing, that's the best accomplishment in the history of that program. And that's not even trolling. That's just a fact. I mean, the record is 71-42-1. And so Clemson has 24, 25 conference championships, 3 national championships. They don't have any of that. So not even close.
No, they don't. It's not close.
No.
Pigskin Pete right here on YouTube. Check him out. Man, we appreciate you stopping by, breaking this thing down, and maybe we'll get another conversation in before the two get together on the field. I'm looking forward to it. And by the way, before I get off here, good luck to the Buckeyes. If I don't see you again before the game, good luck to the Buckeyes. Good luck to the Tigers. Good luck to Oklahoma and the LSU Tigers. I'm looking forward to a great bowl season and a great playoffs. And I know I've concluded this, but I'm going to be a bad host in tracking back, just because at some point in the conversation I wanted to bring up that, the video that I posted following Dabo Swinney's comments, and then the video that I posted with our conversation. Yes. Yeah. I'm just getting hammered. I got like over 600 comments on those 2 videos. I know. Most of them are not too kind. I know. I saw the video. I saw the comments, and I'm going to say it's very rare that I feel bad for a video maker, because we all get it all the time. I felt a little bit bad for you after that one. You took it pretty hard on the chin there, buddy. Can I restate something very quickly here? And I'll be very concise. That number one, I said Dabo Swinney is an amazing football coach. He might be the best in the country, and he has built arguably the best football program in the country. That can't be disputed in any way. And in number 2, he seems to be doing it. I don't know what he's doing behind the scenes, but he seems to be doing it the right way. I love the guy. I think he's a man of faith. He's a man of integrity. He actually seems like he cares and loves his players. I think he's great. I just didn't agree with a few comments. I don't think that they were mean comments. I just didn't agree with them. So I had a few things to say. Listen, this just goes to show you why this is the best sport at the most passionate fans, because you can really hurt people's feelings just by disagreeing with them about football. It's really amazing. But anyway, I felt a little bit bad for you on that one. I'm not going to lie. Well, I should be a big boy and take it. But I think one of the things, and I'm going to speak for you and just in this way, I think neither one of us mind being challenged, mind people disagreeing with us, coming back with a good debate, a good argument. But when you're not understood, or you're being taken out of context, or somebody's completely just inaccurate in what they're saying about what you said, that becomes the frustrating part. Hey, listen, it spilled over to me because I came on to rebut it, and then I got people on my channel telling me, you should boycott doing Mark Rogers' show from now on because he's a Clemson hater and this and that. I'm like, oh, get out of here. I'd rather you leave than me not do Mark Rogers again.